Our service doesn't end after we leave the military. The mission changes, but we still find the need to be of service. What's yours? Listen in as we talk to our guests about their military careers and life after the uniform in their second service. This podcast is sponsored by Fortis et Fidelis, a brand dedicated to honoring the brave and faithful. Make sure to check out fortis-fidelis.com and support the podcast by subscribing to the show and leaving us a 5-star review on all the podcast platforms. Now, let's get to the show.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Today, I have another Marine veteran. He is the host of the Oscar Mike radio podcast, Mr. Travis Partington. What's going on, Travis?
Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you for taking the time here. So, before we get started and talking about your podcast, tell us a little bit about your service in the Marine Corps. When did you serve and how long you served for?
Oh, I'm one of those old school guys now, I guess. I served from 95 to 99. I went into the Air Wing and I did this job called Hawk. It's 7222, and it is a missile. Back when the Marine Corps was doing air defense, it was a missile that you learned to, fire at aircraft, 40 to 60 miles away.
Right.
And that's what I did. And I did it. It's kind of funny. I got to Fort Bliss, where the Air Defense Artillery School is, and found out from the Sergeant First Class in the Army, because it's an Army base, of course, that, hey, what are you doing here? Hawk's going away. And so, sure enough, the Marine Corps, in their wisdom, had decided to cancel the program halfway through my tour. So when those tankers had that happen to them last year, I certainly understood where they were coming from. And then I spent some time in the armory, doing weapon maintenance and stuff like that, and then got out.
So you did one enlistment. You got out. You said it was 1999, just before the turn of the century. We talk a lot about transition and going back to the civilian sector on the podcast. Each one has its own journey. What was that journey for you? How was that?
Well, like a lot of veterans, your TAPS class, your separations class was very high level. And then added bonus, I was not going home. I was going to a different area of the country to move in with my now ex-wife. But I just gotten married and, was jumping into married life. It was a lot of change in a short amount of time and very stressful. Had to find a job real quick. And so just a lot of change I had to deal with, a lot of loneliness because, my friends and family were not close. And I think that affected me a lot more than I cared to admit.
So when you separated, you weren't really near any family or anything like that?
No, my nearest relatives were over 1,000 miles away.
Okay. And when you separate from the Marine Corps, what came next? What did you do next? Did you go back to school, or did you go into the finding a job, or what was that like for you?
So I had to go to the VA to get seen about my leg because I'd injured my leg in the Marine Corps. And the smartest thing I did, the only thing that I really got out of subs class, was find your local veteran service officer and go see them. And I had no idea how any of this stuff worked. So I was working at CVS as a pharmacy tech, which wasn't my cup of tea. Nothing like dealing with an old man who his prescription for certain things has run out and he has a date in the car. That's not a fun conversation, right? Yeah. And all this time, I had gone to see him, and his name was Staff Sergeant Colantonio, not Staff Sergeant. He was a Sergeant Major, Paul Colantonio. 30-year army guy, chevrons and service ribbons down the arm. And he told me that, hey, just hang in there. We're going to get you to some vocational training and go from there. And I had started off after the pharmacy job. I worked at the Division of Employment and Training for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I helped file unemployment claims. And, it wasn't a bad job. There are several advantages to working for the state, not the least of which there's a lot of veterans working for the state, and it kind of operates like the military. Hurry up and wait, tons of paperwork, and an organizational structure that's very hierarchical, right?
Right.
But it wasn't like really me. I was a tech guy. I love technology. That's what I did. And going back to the VSO, Sergeant Major Colantonio said, hey, they've got this program at the New England Shelter and Home for Veterans called this computer course. Because I was trying to get a computer job and I kept getting told that I didn't have the qualifications, which is very weird for me because I'm like, look, I worked on a multi-million-dollar radar system. The missile alone cost more than your house at the time. Now it wouldn't.
Right.
But, the missiles were about $175,000 a piece. And, what do you mean I'm not technical? And that's when I learned you need the paperwork, the alphabet letters after your name, or some piece of paper to prove that you can actually work on technology. And so he had found this computer course. It was 6 months long. He's like, I don't know all the nuts and bolts of it, but if you take it, they give you a certificate, and if you do it right, it will apply for college credit. So I did it. It was 6 months. Got through it, and then I got a job working for a headhunting company near my house, and then I got a job working at my current employer. I've been there for almost 22 years in the financial services industry, doing computer work, and now I do cybersecurity. So it's been, it I didn't have an easy time, but it's amazing how one little piece of information or just one person who says, hey, go try this, I'll make a couple phone calls, can help you out.
Yeah, I think that's an important message, with especially for those who are planning on transitioning out soon, right? A lot of the work that you do in the military sometimes isn't transferable, or things that you do doesn't really get transferred out in the civilian sector. So those certifications and things like that do matter, right? When you do get out, so it's important to find. I think most importantly, find networking, find the right people to connect with to get you to those places.
Absolutely. I mean, that's an affirm on that. I mean, your network is your pool of resources. It's more valuable than money. So, a lot of us veterans don't want to socialize or network. We want to do it on our own. But I'll tell you, it's just like the military, right? You're stronger together than you are by yourself.
Right. So, Travis, you mentioned you've been ever since getting that certification, basically kind of set you up for your life after the military. But along the way, you created this this podcast, this kind of like avenue for to get stories of our military and veteran community out there, and for creating ideas and for people like us to meet. What kind of led you to creating Oscar Mike Radio, and like, how did that come about?
Sure. I started thinking about Oscar Mike Radio in 2014, 2013. One, I was going through a very, very bad time in my life, probably the lowest I'd ever felt, and was really questioning my purpose in life. And then two, right around that time, a couple of Marine buddies that I served with had passed away, not through suicide, but through some circumstances that were like, man, that could have been me.
Mm.
And then the last thing, which is really important, is, I had joined the Marine Corps League, and we would do these rituals for deceased veterans, and a lot of them were veterans that had committed suicide. And it was really brought it home when we do the ritual, we greet the family, offering whatever comfort we may. And, I had a family member ask me why, why did this happen? Why him and not you? Why not you? And that really got me thinking. That really stood with me. I had never really thought of it that way before. Because again, I was going through quite possibly the worst time of my life, and it had been this way for a while now. And I'm like, I don't know why. I don't feel that person is any more or less than me. They just didn't have any hope, was a common theme that I heard. And I'm like, well, what can I do to provide some hope? Because maybe if I do that, maybe I'll get out of this funk and this valley that I'm in. Because it's one of those things, right? You get up and you look in the mirror and you're like, this day's just going to suck. It's just not going to be good. And there's nothing good coming out of this. And oh yeah, it's going to be a while before you can even think about, getting some kind of normalcy back in your life. And I said, well, what can I do? And I'm like, well, should I do a blog? Well, blogs are kind of like everybody had one back then. Do I want to get on video, which is kind of funny now since I am on video? But I'm like, no one's going to want, I have a face for radio. No freaking way. No, I'm not going to do it. And around that time, because I do vocal work and I do, vocal projects, I got connected with some people at WVBF 1530 in Taunton, Massachusetts, and they'd have me come down and guest host on their show. I said, well, I could do the radio because I've always liked radio. And I started asking around, and I'm like, oh my God, radio is a whole different ball of wax. A couple of the stations that I went to in my area, it's a minimum of $2,000 a month to have a 1 hour show a week for 4 weeks on a FM or AM band. Minimum $2,000. So you need to have $24,000 raised before you even think about going on, the radio, because, an hour of airtime was, $500, and that was the cheapest low end of the spectrum. And I'm like, this is just impossible. And it was really weird. Around that time, I got introduced to this event called Dale Dorman Media Day, and it was at Massasoit Community College. And I went there, and there was this guy who had his own podcast network talking about the power of podcasting. And I'm like, man, I could do this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I could do it. I mean, it's a computer and a microphone, and I could try to work this out. And so I met with him. His name's Keith Hayes, of Sinister One Productions, the Hubazoo Network, and, got me dialed in. And the first show absolutely stunk. I go back and listen to it. I'm like
everybody's
right. And it took me, a good 6 months to kind of start figuring out my flow, right? And what started happening was I started really looking forward to being able to do this. I got a real sense of satisfaction telling somebody else's story. I had a purpose. I had to be able to produce content every week, try to make it better every week, and then, start talking to fellow veterans about their hopes, their dreams, their problems, their challenges, their defeats in their business, in their nonprofit, in their recovery, whether it's from substance abuse, physical recovery from being injured in the service, relationship issues, all that. I started being able to really make that work. And so that's kind of how it got started, and that's kind of where I've done now. And that was back in 2016, and I'm on I'm editing right now, number 307. It's been quite a ride.
So now you've over 300 podcast episodes.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's awesome, man. Um, so you mentioned you started this in 2013 or 2014. That's almost.
Well, let me. I started thinking about this in 2013,
Okay.
2014. I was volunteering at the New England Center and Home for Veterans teaching computer class that got me going. But the first track I laid was on July 16th, 2016. So sorry about that.
2016 was the
Six,
first episode.
yep, 6 years ago.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And just throughout that time, um, I know there's over 300, but what would you say? What's been some of the most rewarding times or experiences you've had when bringing in and talking to your guests?
I think it's the whole process. I've learned something from every guest or topic I've covered, right? Um, there's no one person that is a better memory than the other person because I learn from each individual. Um, and part of it's my approach. My approach really is, I don't care if you're a celebrity or Fortune 500 guy or a veteran who just got home trying to stand up, their business. I really want to take that time I have with that person and make it a positive experience. And I think the best part for me is when I do a show and that guest or one of their wife or their parents or their kids will drop me a line in my email or social media saying, hey, I learned something new about my husband or wife who served because of being able to listen to that really makes my day.
Want to support an active duty owned brand? Head over to fortis-fidelis.com. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com, and help us in honoring the brave and faithful service of our nation's defenders. All proceeds will help us create and provide memorial coins to the families of our fallen service members. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com, and help Fortis et Fidelis in honoring the brave and faithful.
Yeah, and all your guests are veterans or involved with the military community, correct?
My guests are veterans or civilians who support veterans. So
Got it.
you have to have some kind of veteran angle in there. And I want people to hear from civilians who support us because there's a lot of civilians out there that would love to open their business or their expertise or their property to a veteran cause or initiative, right? But feel very reluctant to do so because they don't know if they'll be accepted. And so, the last couple of years, there's been some really amazing civilians who figured out a way to take whatever they have and support us with it. And, I want to profile them as well.
So, Travis, since starting this podcast since 2016, um, what would you say, or what resource would you recommend for anybody out there that might be thinking of starting their own podcast? What are some resources that you can kind of provide our audience to help them get started with that?
Before we even talk about resources, we got to discuss, your why and your success failure criteria. If you don't have your why of why you do this, and I, even now you had to be really adaptive to make this time with us work, right? And you're doing that for a reason. You've established that reason. You know why you're doing it, and you're comfortable with that. But a lot of people just dive into podcasting without having that why really identified in their mind. You've got to really, understand yourself and be aware of what you're doing, right? If you don't have that done, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to have any fun. You're not going to have any purpose, and you'll be in pod fade before you know it. So when you have your why done, then let's talk about your success failure criteria. For some people, it's having thousands of likes or followers or high end sponsors, so on and so forth, and that is fine if that's what you want. some people just want to sit on their couch, open their laptop up with a little mic, and share their knowledge with the world. And being able to do that consistently is what they want to do. And the cool thing about podcasting is it's a huge sandbox. You can make your sandcastle however you want, but you need to understand, what that castle is going to look like and how you want it to be. And once you do that, then we can talk about, some of the tools and resources. I tell everybody, look, it's very tempting to buy this and buy that. I like to see people who go out and buy one of those task cams, or I have a Zoom H6 recorder. It just makes things a lot easier. When I say easier, it's the post editing process. It's being able to take that recorder and go anywhere in the world, set up two microphones and have a conversation with somebody. You don't have to have a studio to get good sound with it. It's a really key piece of your equipment. Second thing is just, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube about how to, edit sound. Sound is very complicated. And, you can do a whole lot with Audacity, which is what I use to edit my show still. And it's not the best, digital audio workstation, but it works for me. And I've gotten, good at using it, and I'm still learning aspects of it. The third thing is, believe it or not, man, is organization. If you've got a calendar system like Calendly or your Outlook calendar or your Google calendar, and you've got your OneDrive, OneNote, or Google Drive, or whatever you use to organize your time and your guest time and organize your thoughts, that is really the secret sauce right there. Excuse me, something that you can look at while you're talking on the screen to remind you the points you want to cover, what your guest likes, what they've done in the past. All that stuff adds up to an amazing experience for your guest. So for me, it's a little bit of technology. It's a little bit of upfront investment in technology. It's an understanding of your purpose and how you want to approach your success or failure. And failure is not a bad thing. Failure just means, hey, I got an opportunity to learn here. I messed up. Like, one of the things I had to learn real quickly is you got to hit the record button.
Mm.
Nothing
Yeah.
sucks. Nothing's worse than getting halfway through a show, realizing, oh my God,
Right.
right? That's an example of failure, and you learn from that, right? And then the last thing is really organizing your experience for your guest or topic.
Yeah, I love when you said in the beginning how you kind of put that. It's like, podcasting is like a huge sandbox. You can kind of make your sandcastle any way you want it, right? Because I mean, like, there's plenty of podcasts out there for anybody, for anybody really. And it's really just, I think, when you do start out, is you're right, is it's just finding that why do you want to start this, why do you want to do this, because if once you have that established, you'll be able to be more consistent and continue to follow through with it, right?
Absolutely. And it's been said before, I'll say it again, just have fun. As long as it's fun, then you're never wrong. You're never wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely important, because it won't feel like working if you're having fun with it. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, Travis. So one last question before we go to our second segment here. What's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this episode?
Well, a lot of times, a lot of people, no matter what kind of podcast you're doing or what you're doing in general, whether it's, crocheting or, doing pottery or doing music or whatever, are afraid to expand their network, right? They're afraid to let somebody else, in their zone, because they might steal from me, or they might. And I'm like, look, there is that. It does happen from time to time, but you're going to miss out on all these wonderful interactions with other people that are working hard on the same craft you're working on. So what I'm trying to say is, don't be in a silo. Don't shut yourself off from somebody who might be able to add you some perspective, or a great guest, or just some help understanding how to do what you want to do.
Yeah, don't shut yourself off from something that might add a different perspective.
Absolutely.
I think that's important nowadays, right?
Well, I mean, we're in the military, right? And how many
Right.
times, like, well, he was a reservist, so I don't, screw him. I'm not going to listen to him. And I'm like, well, okay, and reservists sometimes deserve that, right? They deserve it. Sometimes they don't. But they put on the same uniform you and I did, and they serve their country the way they did, and sometimes put their lives at risk. We can't just. That's an example, right? And so outside of the military, there's people like, well, I'm doing a golf fundraiser, and that other guy's doing a golf fundraiser in his town. I'm not going to help him out. I'm not going to go to it. I'm like, well, if you went to it and got to meet him, he might be able to do something with you and
Right.
meet people. It's a big, huge world out there.
Yeah, I think to a certain point, we have to kind of get out of our own way and just work with others, be better teammates.
Absolutely.
All right, so Travis, going into the second segment of the podcast here. So this is what I call the Fast Five. These are the same 5 questions asked all my guests. Are you ready?
Bring it on. Send it.
So first question: what's one hobby you enjoy?
Motorcycling.
What type of motorcycle do you have?
I have a 2007 Yamaha Stratoliner.
Okay. Second question: if you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I'm gonna say George Orwell, because 1984 and Animal Farm cemented my whole view of the world, and I would love just to see what he would think of today's environment now.
George Orwell. Okay. Next question. So following up with that, recommend a book for our audience to read.
Recommend a book. Dune by Frank Herbert. Sci-fi, but it's very connects on a very human level.
You said that was Frank Herbert.
Yep.
Dune.
Okay. Dune.
What's your favorite quote and why?
It's not really a quote. It's a poem. It's Invictus. The name escapes me right now. Who actually wrote it? I can look that up. But the poem was very key to, and the line of the poem that really gets me is, "I am the captain of my fate. I am the master of my soul."
That last part, yeah.
That last part, and that really gets to me because it's the truth.
Right.
Life is throwing all kinds of turbulent chaos at you at all times, but if you can understand that you can persevere and work through it, you truly are in control of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, it was funny you mentioned that. I was actually listening to that on YouTube the other day, but I can't remember who wrote that poem.
I'm gonna bang it right now because it's bothering me. I should know that.
Let's see.
Oh, William Ernest Henley. Yes, hello. Yes.
William Henley. Right.
Yep.
All right, so Travis, last question here. What do you see yourself in 5 years or even 10 years from now?
5 or 10 years from now, I hope to be still doing Oscar Mike Radio. I hope to be moving to the end of my professional career and doing this more full time in some form or fashion. I don't really know. And hope to be join my sons and their children when they have grandkids.
Awesome, man. Well, Travis, again, I appreciate you for taking the time here and sharing a little bit about your story, your service, and what you're doing now with the podcast Oscar Mike Radio. one final thing. Where can our audience, where can they follow you? Where can they support you?
I'm on all the usual channels, but you can go to OscarMikeRadio.com. That's Oscar Mike Radio, all one string.com, and you can access everything there.
Awesome. That's for those listening in, again, OscarMikeRadio.com. All the socials, Oscar Mike Radio. Go follow, go subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. And again, Travis, thanks again for your time, brother.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And this was an enjoyable experience.
Awesome, brother. Take care.
All right.
Hey everyone, Raiden here. I just want to thank you for listening to our podcast. And make sure you guys go check out our website, fortis-fidelis.com. Again, that's fortis-fidelis.com, and learn how you can help us support in providing these memorial coins to the families of the fallen. And make sure you guys go follow our social media on Facebook, FRTS FDLS. Again, that's FRTS FDLS. And on Instagram and Twitter at FRTS_FDLS. Again, that's FRTS_FDLS. And make sure you guys go subscribe, review, and leave a comment on our podcast on all the podcast platforms. Till then, take care.